Welcome back to the channel designed to help you catch more and bigger fish, in-depth angling. I'm excited to record this as we break down the summer white bass patterns, baits, and locations on Stockton Lake, located in the Missouri Ozarks. Be sure to stay until the end of the video as we reveal some white bass fishing spots to go catch yourself a big one this summer. If you are new to the channel, fish Stockton Lake, and want to learn more about white bass fishing, consider subscribing to the channel so you catch the next lake breakdown or fishing adventure. Alright guys, let's dive into this. White bass fishing in the summer on Stockton Lake can be feast or famine. The lake sprawls out over 298 miles of shoreline, starting on the north side of the lake by the dam, spreading south up two distinct main river arms that have numerous coves branching off of them. Stockton Lake features excellent offshore structure in the main channel and the larger creek coves that white bass use to school up and feed on shad. After the white bass return to the main body of the lake from their spring spawning run, they school up in old river channels and old creek channels, chasing shad up to the surface in the early morning and late evening to feed more aggressively and back down to suspend on or off of the bottom during most of the day in a lot of these offshore areas. This flat tapering point here butts up next to the old river channel bend that comes in closer towards the shore, and there's a good sized ledge there, so these fish will use these old creek channels like this and these old river channels like this and set off these drop-offs and then push shad up next to these walls and get them pushed up next to the surface out here during the early morning and late evening. And if there's wind coming into here as well, they'll come in and use the shallow ends of this to push shad up closer towards shore. White bass don't use cover as often as crappie and bass do. They're often just chasing shad or being around shad somewhere in the middle of the lake and off of this main lake structure. Stockton Lake has tons of old road beds that are underneath the water that make great habitat for those fish to go and cruise just over the top of. These flats near deep channels are good places to start searching for white bass on Stockton, especially when wind is blowing on the nearby shore, as it usually pushes the shad towards the bank there and gets those fish a little more shallow. It becomes a little bit easier for us to target and catch as anglers. They can also be found schooled up on points and around drop-off edges from old creek and river channels that run throughout the heart of Stockton Lake. This would be a great example of an old river channel bend right up here next to another flat. There's a little bit more of a hump that's right here, indicated by this blue area. That'd be the top of this flat area here. Another little high spot right there. And then we have a little point that sticks out there here. So there's everything that white bass want as far as structure and places to go ambush prey and chase shad throughout here. They have the deep water access really close by, and they're able to pop up on here and stay in relatively deep 20 to 15 foot of water throughout the day and not really have to leave those shad or come off of that area and just suspend in there or drop off right back into the deeper water as they want to. Being able to locate these underwater offshore structures and bait fish is key to finding schools of feeding white bass. These hungry white bass and more actively feeding white bass are never really far away from the shad. The map I'm using here is Navionics chart viewer that shows the general layout of the bottom with 1 foot contour lines, but there are other contour topographic maps out there that work as well. Using a map like this gives you a general layout for what's under the surface, and combining that with electronics will help you find the areas holding fish faster and give you a general idea of where to start looking. You can also follow areas that have seagulls, as they usually are around bait fish like the shad schools that these white bass feed on. Keep an eye out for surface activity in the early morning and evening as the white bass chase shad to the surface, trapping them to feed on the top. These feeding windows where those fish are chasing up on top of the water right there are very short in some cases. Sometimes they'll be up on top for just a few minutes there, so if you can see that, go right to them and start casting into there. I like to throw these Rebel pop bars. Topwater baits such as this and the spooks work well at resembling fleeing shad during a feeding frenzy, and they cause a lot of commotion getting their attention. You want this to be worked pretty erratically with lots of quick short little pops, and then you can pause it there for maybe a second or two and then go right back to working it again. Those white bass love to chase, and they will come up and smash this. Small fluke style baits work great as well just below the surface, as they are able to be worked erratically and be paused just underneath the surface, slowly falling back down towards them. And you can throw some paddle tail swim baits here like the Kitech swim bait as well, just underneath the surface to catch some of those fish that are suspended just underneath the schools of shad. When the fish are down a little bit deeper during the day, I like to throw these paddle tail swim baits as well with a 1/4 to 3/8 ounce jig head to get down to depth. These Kitech swim baits you can use pretty close down to the bottom, hop them off the bottom if they're laying down close. or you can work them throughout the entire water column to whatever depth the fish are at. Work slow and fast, so they're great for basically all throughout the summer in whatever mood the fish are in. You can also use spoons and rattle traps to catch fish while you're going down there into those deeper depths. Something like this 6 cents Divine Floater Spoon works good at resembling some of those little bit larger shad. This is about a 4 3/4 inch spoon right here. It's important with all of these baits I'm showing you here to just try to match the size of the shad that you're seeing. If you're seeing fish that are feeding on 5-inch shad, maybe something like this would be a better option for you, especially if they're down a little bit deeper. But if you're seeing fish feeding on just really small shad, maybe something more like a smaller spoon or smaller paddle tail is going to be a better option for you. You're just trying to match the size. Once those fish are really aggressively feeding though, and if you hit the right window, it's not really going to matter a whole bunch whether your colors are exactly right. Just have something that resembles a shad and a silver, and it's got a lot of flash with it. Silver and whites are usually my favorite two colors, and chartreuse works good as well. These spoons can be worked more vertically throughout the water column if you're fishing straight up and down, as well as these rip and wrap kind of style baits, these rattle trap from Rapala. These are good for covering throughout the entire water column, and they can be worked pretty aggressively, fast, and catches a lot of white bass while you're able to cover some water. Later in the summer, as water temperatures rise, the thermocline sets up throughout the lake and can be seen on 2D down imaging graphs. Most of the white bass will suspend at or above the thermocline. It can set up at different depths and change from one area to another on Stockton Lake, just as because it's so large and the depth of the entire lake is different. Out here, down here by the dam, we're looking at like 90 foot out here in the main channel. Very deep, very big river channel bends and things like that. It's pretty wide down here. So thermocline might set up at a different depth down here than it will up here and more of the river arm area where the channel is in the 30s out here, and everything's a lot more tight. So it's really going to be something that you have to look at for the area that you're at and the time that you're out there. Having that 2D imaging where you can see straight down below you. You usually see a hard line. It's suspended kind of in the middle of the water column there. And you'll notice as you mark fish, most of them will be around that line or just above it. It usually sets up in 25 to 15 foot of water from my experience on Stockton Lake from when I've seen it out there throughout the summertime. And it really varies quite a bit from whether you're down there by the dam or up further in the river arms. It's key to be on the water during the prime feeding windows. As I said, they could be very short, and it can mean the difference between getting a good limit of white bass or getting only a couple and getting skunked for the day. It can be really feast or famine. Be sure to be out there in the early morning and evening if you are looking to catch them by casting to them, but you can still catch good numbers by trolling crankbaits and covering water for active white bass suspended around the thermocline throughout the day, even when those fish are down and not really feeding aggressively. You can still troll these different baits like these Berkeley flicker shad. They work great for the walleye and crappie as well in the lake, so you'll catch some of those, and you'll also catch quite a few nice white bass on these Rapala shad wrap style crankbaits. These aren't the only couple that you can use, but these are a couple of the ones I like to troll with. They do a really good job at catching a variety of species throughout Stockton Lake. You'll get some bonus walleye, some bonus bass, even some catfish in there as well. Everything in the lake that'll eat shad will eat these baits, so be prepared to catch just about anything. Some good areas to troll in are the same areas that you would be going through and casting to. You can troll around these main lake points like this. You can troll in the middle of these coves where these old creek beds used to be. So you guys can see there's just like a little bit of a trench that runs up through here, and those areas will be used by white bass as they're coming into here, especially if there's a lot of shad in this cove. They'll be cruising through this area right here trying to push shad around. Even when they're suspended, they'll do this. And as well as out here just in the old river channel, even though this is 90 foot of water out here, once that thermocline's set up, they'll be at or above it, so you'll find fish like 20 foot down, 15 foot down out here, and they'll be chasing shad kind of at that depth. So if you could find a thermocline, try to troll around that same depth or just above it, and you'll have better success than just trying to throw a crankbait out there and hope that something happens. This island out here in the middle of Stockton Lake 2 will hold white bass throughout the summertime. You can look out there for them, and you'll find those fish busting on the surface out here. You'll find them as you're trolling around some of the break lines on this island out here too. It's a good area to go and try. I've caught them good around some of these different points that are throughout here, some of these different coves that run back over here, this end of the lake over here, right where the two river channels split off. This whole area here and right along this old bluff end over here as well is good areas to go troll for them, especially if you get a little bit of wind going through there. Coming up the river arms as well, over here by Masters Island, throughout here, some good offshore structure off this point with a good drop off that comes next to this old river channel. That's good. There's plenty of good areas that are like this. You don't have to go to these spots specifically. I'm just showing you a couple of the ones I've caught them at before in the summertime. There's several as you go further up here as well, where there's old river channels that come right up next to these bluff ends here. If you don't have a map handy for you, you can look at where the steeper banks are, where there's cliffs on Stockton Lake, and those are where the old river channels have carved out places that are deeper. So if you're looking to try to troll those, you can find those pretty easily by doing that. But there are tons of old road beds and old road structures as well that I will try to troll on. And it's just a difference in hardness of bottom. Those fish will sometimes relate to that hard bottom where the old road used to set up at, once there is a bunch of like soft bottom around it. So like these old road beds here kind of sprawl out throughout the lake, and you can find those fish coming in off of these old river channels to pop up here on these flats, and they'll a lot of times focus in around those hard spots that are present on those old flats when there's not very much structure around. These are also great areas to troll out through here, as you have a very, very large offshore structure out here that spans quite a ways. You have all this old river channel out here with deep channels, but the structure just comes offshore quite a long way, so you can troll back and forth over this area and hit several different depths and cover a wide variety of structure down below you just by going through this area throughout the day. And you'll be able to kind of tell where the fish are and what they're doing by what part of this you'll catch them at. If you're catching them out here through these deeper indentions through here, or if you're catching them up on top of some of these humps, a little bit more of a mid-depth area out through here, indicated by that blue area. Then you'll be able to come back through and either cast to them or keep trolling back through that spot and have a good day out on Stockton Lake. Large creek coves like the one here as well are great to go and troll into, and you can find those fish sometimes all the way back and close to the end of these coves because they're fairly deep still in a lot of these places, especially where there's those steeper contour lines. They're great to go in through here. Just watch out for a lot of the trees. There is standing timber in this lake, so if you're going through and you're just trolling, you want to make sure that you're in an area that's not as riddled with a bunch of stumps and old trees standing up. You'll lose a lot of baits doing that if you're not careful. Hope you found this video to be helpful and that it helps you catch more white bass on Stockton Lake this summer. Since you stayed to the end of the video, here are 2 others I think you'll like. Thanks for watching. Until next time, explore deeper. There's more out there.